Well, welcome to Digging Deeper, a ministry of City Church and a podcast geared towards tackling issues in the Christian church that we wouldn't normally be able to talk about on a Sunday morning. Right. And so I am here today with my friend, Reverend Kenneth Curry, and I'm going to go ahead and prophesy Reverend Dr. Kenneth Curry because he's working on doctorate. And so I'm happy today to be with Kenneth and to talk about a conversation that I'm excited to have. And so thank you for taking a minute to be here.
I'm glad to be here.
Kenneth, will you take a minute and just tell everybody a little bit about you and your life and your ministry?
Cool. As he said, my name is Kenneth Curry. I pastor Friendship Baptist Church, Yorba Linda, California. I've been serving as its senior pastor for almost 10 years. I've served this church for 21 years and grew up in a sister church to Friendship. So I'm actually living my dream. Friendship was a church we always wanted to be at the church I grew up at True Vine in Linwood, California. And so just really trying to serve God. We are considered a regional church. And so our people commute from LA County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, and of course, Orange County, where we are situated. So it's a nice situation, predominantly African-American church, but have all types of people coming and a really interesting season for us post-pandemic. So we're trying to lean into all of the opportunities there for us.
Awesome. Tell me about your family.
Yeah. Well, I am married, been married this June will be 9 years. Awesome. So 9 months after I started pastoring Friendship, I got married, had this huge kind of open wedding because we had both been a part of Friendship and just did not want to limit what we did. So it was a huge open wedding with people that had prayed for us to come together. My wife, when I married her, had two sons. One was a teenager, one was an adult. They're about 6 years apart. And so now they're both adults. One's graduated from Biola. The other one is working on a degree at Cal State University, San Marcos. And our oldest has a 8-year-old daughter. And so we have this mosaic of a family, if you will.
That's cool.
But it's a great opportunity for us. Awesome. They go to church, love church, all that type of stuff. So really happy. My wife is extremely supportive in ministry. And so we have a great time doing what we do.
Yeah, I loved when I went to your church and I just saw her right there in the front row, just cheering you on.
She's always there with me.
I love that. And I got to spend a little bit of time with her, and she's an incredibly intelligent woman in her own right with the stuff she knows and does. And frankly, it's amazing to me that you're here. This guy has the highest energy level of anyone I've ever met. He has more things on his calendar than anyone I've ever known. You're involved in, I couldn't even count how many boards you serve in and the things.
I serve on at least 3 but that's nothing. You're a friend of mine. You asked me to come. I'm here.
Well, thank you. So that was my roundabout way of saying that. Thank you.
That's what happens. I believe relationships are important. And I think even as we have our conversation today, we'll talk about some of that, why relationships are important. Yes. But if you call me and I can do it, I'm doing it.
I know that.
Kyle, you've been very supportive of me and we've had opportunities to grow together. So I'm excited about it.
Me too. So let's just dive in. Okay. So I'm going to read a little bit of what I'm going to call the bad news first.
Okay, no problem.
And so I've got some stats here that are just honestly kind of staggering. As a pastor, we see it, but to actually see it on paper. So in the year 2000, roughly 45% of the United States population claimed to be a practicing Christian.
Right.
Roughly 35% of the population at that time claimed to be a non-practicing Christian. This probably makes sense when you think about the framework.
So 80% of the people were saying they were Christians, either practicing or non-practicing.
Right. Yeah. So that's a pretty high percentage, right? Yeah. And then something happened in 2012, and this is from Barna Research. I can put the link in the bottom in the comments if anybody's interested. And practicing, presumably, church attending, Bible reading, Christians, praying, it dropped dramatically from a high of 50% in 2009 to 31% in 2012. And I think probably a lot of churches saw that. And then by the time we get to 2020, and this is, again, we got the pandemic in there, but you still see it sliding before
But we
then.
saw it in 2019. We saw the slide.
Yeah, it was,
even in church attendance.
Yes.
I mean, we were hearing 1.2 or 1.8 Sundays a month, which means most people are attending less than 2 Sundays a month.
That's right. And that was before COVID ever happened.
Yes, sir.
So we get to a low of 25%.
Wow.
And so you've got this whole subset of the population now who claim to be Christians, but just say I'm not going. I don't want to be. I think as pastors, we've all seen this in our churches. And so the bad news sum that Barna writes on his website, or someone who works for him, says that more than 2.5 decades worth of tracking research shows that Americans are softening their practice of Christianity. And these stunning changes raise questions and suggest urgent implications. That's what he says. And then he asks, first, why are these things occurring? And social research obviously is limited. And so they can't always say why something's happening, but they can identify.
Show us that it's happening.
It's happening, and it's happening at a very rapid pace. And the second thing this says, and we're going to get to our topic in just a second here, it says the research raises urgent questions for church leaders about the nature of the relationship Americans have to Christian practice. What redefines and what anchors the church-going, Bible reading, and prayer of adults. And here's the part that I really stuck out to me. It says, among the interesting stories in the data is that private practices of faith, such as prayer and scripture intake, aren't sliding as much. But church attendance is. We've seen that. So that actually gives me a little bit of hope. So that takes me to the good news part. Okay, so here's the good news, and then we'll dive in. A brand new study in October of 2022 from Barna showed that 77% of the population, this is only October, said that they believe in God or a higher power. Now, we know that doesn't mean they go to church, okay? I get that. And 74% of them say they would like to grow spiritually. 44%, this is the part that gives me a lot of hope, and this is why I'm excited to have this conversation. 44% say they're more open to God today than they were before the pandemic. And it gets even better because everybody loves to paint all these doom and gloom stats about teens these days. Barna has a new study coming out called The Open Generation, where 76% of teens studied said that Jesus speaks to me in a way that is relevant to my life. And so, okay, I've been talking a lot. What do you kind of feel as you hear these stats? Like what hits your heart?
So there are several things there. First, that people are personally seeking to grow. Right. So that whole idea, that statistic, that prayer and scripture reading on a personal level is up and not down.
That's
while church attendance may be down. So it also speaks to the individualism that has happened as a result of the pandemic, isolation, being at home, which I don't think is a bad thing. Now we've got to figure out, how do we earn the right opportunity to speak into that space? I think that's the biggest piece for church leaders and pastors. How do we earn the right to capitalize on what is already taking place and then moving forward with it? I think that it's hopeful. I use some of these stats on Sunday with my church, and we'll probably take what you've given me here and use it again this Sunday because I tried to articulate the idea that we are not done yet. I talked about Caleb, and I talked about the fact that when Caleb asked for his mountain, even though there were giants or obstacles or issues, he was not done. And I think that that's the message for the church. We're not done.
We're not done.
We have an opportunity. We just have to reimagine what the opportunity looks like.
And I liked what you said about earning the right to get, because I think what was a given of hey, we can get this amount of people into church on a Sunday, it's not a given anymore.
It's not a given.
And even with the people who are very consistent, I almost feel like there's this need to keep producing, and I know some of that is not of God. But
I don't think that it's perfectionism or professionalism or perfection. You don't have to be perfectionist, but there is this idea that is not a given. You don't just get it.
They're not just going to come.
They're not just going to come. You've got to stay fresh in all the areas. We know as pastors, and it's tough to hear, that preaching is not the number one thing that has people coming to our churches.
That's right.
It's in there, but it's the atmosphere, it's the relationships, it's the people. And we have to communicate that to our people, that we want to, as hard as I work on a sermon, I need you to work on our first impressions. I need you to work on relationships with people. We need to work on community. All of those things are equally important.
Yeah, they are. That's really good. As you think about your church's story, are those stats consistent with your experience?
Yeah, definitely. And I do see post-pandemic a rise because people have been in isolation, but it's slow. We're working at it. We're having to have conversation. But I did see that. I saw last year, as we started talking about, I really tried to preach because in the African-American community, it's been slow for people coming back to church. I tried to preach all of 2022 about it's time for us to come back. I talked about Ezra and rebuilding, rediscovering church. I've talked about all these things that we have to come back into community and understand the reality that a lot of people will still be online. And what do we do to reach out to them so that they're not just watching, but they're still participating? So yes, I see it, to answer your question. And yes, I'll even answer a question you didn't ask. I saw the slide, the same things that Barna talked about pre-pandemic or before, and that's going to be our measure from now on, right? Pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. We've definitely seen the slide in terms of focus. But what I did learn in the pandemic, especially as we were coming to an end, when offered opportunities for small groups and deepening, people took advantage of those.
They did. Yeah, that makes sense.
Even where we've done a lot of small groups on just reading the Bible. So at our church, it's a big deal to read through the Bible every year, and we give you 6 ways. And so read through the Bible sounds better than what it is. Some people read the whole Bible. I did that last year. I read with a group. We did the Bible in 90 days, which I absolutely love. But we had some groups that read in about 6 to 8 weeks, the New Testament or the Old Testament, or Proverbs and Psalms and Proverbs 3 times or something like that, so that they had a chance to read, and they love doing that in community.
That's good. So, because I think it taps into that. The believers want to grow spiritually, and they want to engage deeper. And they need someone
to talk to about it.
Yeah.
So if they have a little group, meets online, we read together, we might read a few verses together, then they have a place to kind of grow and experience and ask questions, and they don't feel like they don't know.
Yeah.
My predecessor used to always say that what keeps people from coming to Bible studies, what keeps people from coming to even small groups, is they feel like they will be ostracized or pointed out for what they don't know.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
And we have to understand that there's still some stuff. I mean, if we're honest, there's stuff that you and I don't know, right? Yeah, but we dig deeper to get it so we can help people translate it, utilize it, and move forward with it.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I did a Bible reading thing similar. I think it was 21 or something. I didn't finish it till midway through 22. So I had to hit the reset button a few times. Yeah. So it's a good little reminder for me to, just that people are looking for that. And
then they have questions.
They do.
And if they can have someone that they do it with. I love reading the Bible in 90 days because there's stuff that you make connections with faster. Yeah. Like when you take a whole year, you might forget something you read back in January and how it connects. Yeah. But 90 days is really fast. But it helped me to deal with my questions. And I wasn't leading the class. I wasn't the teacher. I was a student.
Yeah.
And so when they ask, well, what did you like? I can say what part I liked or what I reread and how it was for me. I don't always have to lead. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
That in the day in which we live now, Kyle, and as we deal with the church, that people just want to see the pastor be a regular person.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And I love that about you. So here's kind of my take on the stats. And I want to get your feedback on what you think. So, you got these 3 subsets of the population, right? You've got the church-going, Bible reading, praying Christians is declining. You've got the people who say that they're interested in God, which was declining, but it's showing that it's coming back. And then you got the people who aren't interested at all. Right. So what I'm interested in is how do we get to that crowd of people who already believe, but just aren't plugged in? And so one of the big reasons I see as to why people have gone away from church is church hurt.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about that specifically today, because I think when I look on social media, it's a buzzword, church hurt, I've been hurt by, and I think, as a pastor, I have my thoughts and things like that. So I kind of think there's a spectrum of, you hear the word church abuse. I don't know if you've seen that in social media. You got church hurt, which I would put in the middle there. Right. And then you got like just church offense, where there's this culture of just, I'm offended, that, and my problem that I see
those are great categories too.
They're all lumped together right now. Like they're the same and they're not. And so I'm going to read something I read from a blogger, and then I want to get your take on the spectrum. A blogger that I follow named Natalie Runyon, she said, that the offense is the pandemic of the church. And she said the sickness in the church isn't deconstruction, reconstruction, or no construction. It's defensiveness, entitlement, ego that doesn't want to be confronted. Now, part of our job as pastors is lovingly calling people out. Sometimes we have to do it. And you know, it's a difficult thing. Sometimes nobody likes to have those conversations. And, you know, sometimes the other person is hurt or offended. And so I'm just curious, before we ask how you navigate that, how would you define church abuse, church hurt, and church offense? How would you separate those?
So church abuse would be what I would call ongoing, direct abuse. It's intentional. I think that's the word I want to do. Abuse in terms of, just like when we think, I hate to lump it, but you think child abuse, physical abuse, those things are kind of planned. It's not accidental. It is. And there are some church environments and some church leaders that take the control aspect of being able to control things and control people to the 10th degree in the negative, right? And they want to control all of the environment. That's how I would call abuse.
That's good. And I would just add to that, you know, if that's something you're experiencing in any way, like, you need to talk to somebody about that. Obviously, like, that's a very serious thing. And that intentionality, so. I think that's that you know, and ongoing
intentionality and control. That's where I would see abuse, right?
That's really good.
And then in terms of my second one,
church hurt.
Church hurt is something hurt me or was said to me, and if we had a conversation, we could fix it.
Yes. It's
just like in our marriages, right? If your wife may say something to you that hurts you, or you may say something to her that hurts you, but if you all get a chance to talk about it, you can fix it. A lot of times in church hurt, we don't get to talk about it.
That's
so we don't fix it. And it may have been something you said, or I've had, especially before I was the pastor, because as I dealt with it so much, I learned to fix it. But I had people, when I just served the church, I was the youth pastor, and people looked up to me because I may have run the service or did something in the service. And they'd say, well, you just walked by me. And they were hurt that I walked by them. I'm 6'7". They might be, and I might not have seen them, or I was thinking about something else. So I really have worked over years to see people. And I'll have people come back to our church and say, hey, I remember, he remembered my name, and we joined this church because he remembered my name. It would be great if they said it was because of my sermon, right? But it was because I remembered their name or something like that. So I think that hurt is there was an offense, or there was an issue, and we didn't get to resolve it.
That's right.
And so it festered, and it made me feel some kind of way. We say that in my community, some kind of way. And so I just kind of moved away. And then the last one was church offense. That there's a lot of people that are offended by some of the church's stance on certain things, maybe because of what's in their family, or maybe because of their history. Not so much you did it to me, but I'm offended by how it might affect others, or by the attitude of the church in totality.
That's good. No, that's a really good perspective. So let me, you know, and I think you kind of talked about it with the guy that you walked by and you didn't remember. But how do you navigate those kind of hard conversations? You know, when you know something you're going to say might be a little tough. Like, what's your usual way of going about it?
Well, my usual way will be that to highlight love, that I love people, and highlight that God loves people. And there are some things, even in the biblical text, that are hurtful to us or call us out. And it calls me out. I tell, there's a thing I heard a singer say years ago, Yolanda Adams. And she was getting ready to sing, and she said that she would say, Lord, before I tell them, please tell me. Before I show them, please show me. Before I speak it to them, please speak it to me. So and in other words, I tell my people, this text hits me first before I bring it to you. And so I'm not out to get anybody. I'm not out. That's why I tend to like series where we kind of move through books of the Bible or different things. So it doesn't seem like you're going after, because we can have pet peeves of things. But if you just got to move, and this is the trajectory of the text, it's like, I'm not going after anyone. I'm not trying to get my own point out. We're moving through that. But I want people to understand that this text speaks to and spanks me at times as well. It doesn't just do it for them. I'm not an authority, although I have opportunity. I'm not an authority that is devoid of being reeled in and reined in for my behavior or my thought process. I'm a work in progress, just like you.
That's really good. Lord, say it again. That you Lord, have it speak to me
before I speak it to them.
Before I speak it to them.
Show it to me before I show it to them. Let it impact me. And I tell my people that all the time. And I try. You went to Biola like I did, and I tried to. Don Sanukian was my preaching professor, and I know you know him. And that conversation of how do we come up, he's less on illustration and more on application. So what are some applicable opportunities to apply this text, and trying to be imaginative? And I'll admit, I'm not always great at it, but the other day I was just saying, I'm not the only person that deals with family drama where I have an issue with my siblings or something going on. And so
I'm laughing because I have a couple right now.
Yeah. and that is, and I had members say to me, well, and I was saying something to them, and they said, well, Pastor, you just said, because they were dealing with the same thing. So if we can make it relatable, we can deal with it. But church hurt is it for me, when I'm getting ready to have that conversation, I try to be as loving and clear that this hits me the same way to hit you. And I'm not after anybody.
That's really
and then you can go from there. Now, outside of the pulpit, I think, there are things that come up just relationally. As pastors, you and I, we're trying to move the church. We have to have some hard conversations with people about, how we do ministry, what we do. I try to hear people and let them hear. I'll never forget, I had a person, and the way they kind of led ministry, they were a good leader, but they would always say, well, God told me and God said it. And I said to them, I said, that's great. And I believe God speaks to you. But the hard part is, once you say that, I can't argue.
No.
So if I don't agree, or if I have questions, I might agree, but I have questions, I feel I can't argue because I'm arguing with God. Yeah. And I said, you have to change that as much as you can. And the person said, you know what? Point taken. And they worked on it. But I have to be secure enough to be able to say that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And move on.
And I love that you're that kind of leader. I've been around you in different settings, and it's never God told me or thus saith. It's I think, I feel.
Right.
And then it allows for God to bring about a broader perspective.
Give everybody a chance to talk.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little personal, all right? And I'm going to go first because I'll give you a chance to think about it. But we think about these hurtful church interactions, and maybe for some people watching, maybe that's why you don't go, or listening, that's why you don't go. So we've all had them. And myself, as a leader, I'm going to just share a real story of something that happened that was hard for me to work through. So there was someone that years and years ago tried to get me fired, and used information that I had shared with them in confidence, which other people knew. It wasn't a secret. It wasn't sinful. It was things that were going in my heart. And by the way, I'll tell you what it was. I deal with anxiety. And
we all do.
Yes, and we all do. I probably deal with a little more than you do. I'll tell you that right now. And they used that fact against me in my leadership in the worst way. And it became a really difficult situation that led to the severing of a relationship. And it was hard. And it's so crazy because all of these years later, I can still remember it like it was yesterday.
You go right back to it.
I go right back to it.
Yeah.
And if I start getting into and it's like the feelings come right back. I've forgiven the person. We've seen each other. We're good. Right. We're not walking together in a tight way. I believe forgiveness is different than trust. Right. But honestly, I look at that and go, I'm a church leader, and that was hard for me to get through. Has there been any situation that you'd feel comfortable putting out there? That, again, not naming names.
No, I wouldn't name names. But the same thing happened as I became the pastor. friendship. And I was an internal candidate. You know, some people understand that. And there were people that left because they didn't want me to be their pastor. And for me, I was good enough to run the church. I was good enough to be your kid's youth pastor. I wasn't good enough to be your pastor. And it was devastating. Wow. It has taken me almost the whole 10 years to get over bits and pieces of that, to see people at other things, to interact with them. It was hurtful. Or to hear, because there was a group that aligned against me, people changed their stance on me, where they had been supportive and had been there for me, that they changed. And I had to do a lot of digging deep with God and in myself to get over it. And in fact, for me, I have said that I'm free in 23, that I'm really free from the people and the worries and the complaints and all that stuff, that I really want to focus. Now, I want to say this, for us, that's easier, right? Because we are believers and leaders in the church.
That's right.
It's harder for people that don't have, and I don't want to say as deep a relationship, but aren't centered the same way.
Yes. Yeah, man, thanks for sharing that. That's I've heard from other pastors who have, taken over, and I know you took over from like a legacy
pastor. He pastored 48 years.
It's basically Moses, coming after Moses, and you've done it well, to the point now where I see, and it's not that it's Jesus's church, but it's clear it's Kenneth's, and that would be so hard to go through, and you see the aligning of people and all that, that's so painful and so personal. So what would you say to somebody who's hurt by something, and that's why they don't want to go to church? Maybe you're listening to this right now. You listen to all kinds of Christian podcasts. You read your Bible and you pray, but you're not going to church. What would you say about how to get over that?
Yeah. So I would say give people a chance. You'd want a chance. Think about the fact that you could easily offend people. I look at it that I could have done something, or I may do something in the future that easily offends someone. I want them to give me a chance, or hurts them. I probably should use that word better, or hurts them. And I want them to give me a chance. I believe in the biblical response. If your brother has offended you or hurt you, go to them.
Go to them.
Come talk to me. I want the opportunity to fix it. Let me make it right. And even if it means I can't fix it, but I can apologize, give me the opportunity to apologize. And now, if the individual or the situation cannot be addressed, or they won't acknowledge it, do your part to the best of your ability, so you don't hold it and then it festers.
Yeah.
Because that makes the next person that much harder for you to connect with and deal with. And so that's important. I'd say I would pray that we could be more direct in our communication. Let's talk about it. Kyle, hey, this hurt my feeling. I'd like to talk to you about it, and then get the opportunity to get some things off of our chest. A lot of times what I found is that people hurt, Kyle, and they go and they hurt in isolation. And they don't get a chance to fix it or talk about it or get it off their chest. Or when they do share it, they share it with others that are equally offended. And it snowballs. It just gets worse.
And that just never goes anywhere good in the church. And so, I recently just talked to someone who started going back to church, and it had been 4 years since they had been attending. And it was because of that. Yeah. Hey, a special guest has just showed up. Pastor Lisa Toney, come on in, and we're going to reset here. Welcome. Hey, so give us a minute. We'll be right back. Okay, so we've reset, and we're here with Pastor Lisa Toney.
Hey, guys.
Hey,
Lisa. So she was supposed to have been here the whole time, but she got in a 6-car pile up
on the freeway
on the way to get here, which just shows that the enemy doesn't want this to happen.
I guess so.
And so we're going to jump right in. We've been talking about church hurt.
Everybody was fine, by the way.
Yes.
We all survived it.
She's
so
okay.
That's great.
Yes, thank you.
We're so glad to hear that.
I was missing you guys. I'd rather be here than there.
I'm glad you're here now.
Glad you're here. So we've been talking about church hurt, and just, the barrier that presents in, honestly, a lot of people who call themselves believers but aren't involved in church.
Yeah.
And so what's your take on the culture of, the church hurt and church offense and all of that, and how to move forward.
Yeah, it's such a hard one because, I mean, honestly, we're just all human. And so we continually hurt each other, even if we are followers of Jesus and have we're trying to live according to what he calls us to do. But sometimes we just unintentionally say things or hurt things. I mean, we do that with our families. We do that at work, and unfortunately it happens in the church. And I think that it's just heightened because there's a sense of spirituality, which is very much connected to our souls and who we are. But let me just encourage you guys, if I could tell you story after story of people that have been hurt or wounded. And often it is so unintentional. I don't think anyone tries to hurt people in the church, and it just means we have to be able to step up and be able to say, hey, this was hard for me, or you got hurt, and talk through it. And
and Lisa, one of the points that I made with Kyle a little earlier was that if our spouse, your husband, my wife, had offended me or hurt me, I would have an opportunity to talk about it, right? Yeah. And so we'd be able to fix it. And a lot of times in church, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to fix it. And I think that's what you're saying as well, that we've got to give each other the grace and the opportunity to address some things.
Yeah, I love that. And, you got to think about, I mean, if you get mad in a restaurant, they serve you a bad meal, do you totally write off the restaurant forever? I mean, maybe, but most of us give it another try.
You try at least
you get the wrong drink at Starbucks, go after your barista. You go back.
My wife will go back.
Yeah. So let me just encourage you to, go back, give it another try. Don't write it off completely. Yeah.
And it is true. And like in marriage, you start with one kind of love, and as years and years go on, it becomes a deeper love, and you work through offense
for other reasons,
for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you figure out how to make it work.
And I feel like that's what the church is. It's a very deep relationship, especially the longer you walk with people. And so if you just cut them out, it's not going to help you or serve you in life. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and say in the next episode, we're going to talk about just really what the top excuses for not going to church. Right. And so Lisa's here. And so you're going to want to listen to the next one. And
join us as we dig deeper.
Yeah, let's do it. All right.
Digging deeper.
We'll see you guys next time. Join us for the next conversation.
So the cop that was doing my interview, he's like, where are you going? Are you a realtor? I'm like, no, I'm not a realtor. I'm a pastor. I'm going to a podcast.
Why do you think you're a realtor?
He's like, because of the way you're dressed. I'm like,
really? That's weird.
Realtors do always dress like they're ready to present. Yeah. So I could see that.
Yeah. Okay. He was very nice. I mean, he wasn't a jerk or anything. He was nice. So, yeah.